cat in gloves catches no mice. Boris refused to impose further lockdown measures spark fury in UK. Boris Johnson has been told by the Welsh First Minister to impose further lockdown measures in the face of the Omicron variant, as England is a global outlier when it came to restrictions. Mark Drakeford said that the Prime Minister was politically paralysed from implementing further restrictions. He added, "The one country that stands up as not taking action to protect its population is England." In a COVID briefing, the First Minister of Wales announced COVID restrictions currently in place in Wales would not be relaxed. England is the only one of the four nations that has not gone beyond Plan B measures since Omicron first reached the UK. Earlier this week, Mr Johnson said he hoped England could ride out the Omicron wave without further restrictions being necessary. The Prime Minister reiterated the impact a further lockdown would have on the economy and education, saying that we can find a way to live with this virus. Mr Drakeford said Boris Johnson's government was failing to protect people in England. He said, "The outlier here is not Wales. Wales is taking action. As is Scotland. As is Northern Ireland. And as are countries right across Europe and right across the globe. The one country that stands out as not taking an action to protect its population is England. The question is not why is Wales not following what is going on in England, the real question is why is England such a global outlier in the way governments across the world are attempting to protect their populations from coronavirus. The political contrast between England and Wales is this: here in Wales we have a government that is capable of taking the action needed and act, where necessary, to protect our population. In England we have a government that is politically paralysed with a Prime Minister unable to secure an agreement in his cabinet to take the actions his advisers have been telling him ought to be taken. And even if he can get his cabinet to agree, then he cannot get his MPs to agree. He claimed the peak of the Omicron wave was likely to be about 10 to 14 days away. His remarks came after a senior epidemiologist, who has advised the Welsh and UK governments, called for restrictions to be dropped to pre-Omicron levels. Mark Drakeford was speaking as the latest data shows Wales still has some of the highest infection rates in the UK, 12 days on from stricter restrictions being imposed here on Boxing Day. According to the UK government dashboard, Wales' infection rate is 2,577 cases for every 100k people in the last week. In contrast, Scotland's is 2,079 and England's 1,786. Northern Ireland has the highest rate in the UK at 2,852. Three council areas, Blaenau, Gwent, RCT and Merth, have higher rates than any of the English hotspots. There was a coarse reaction from Twitter users to the First Minister's remarks. @Nasha Nigel replied, "It's Drakeford that's doing the failing. He made the wrong call and now has to double down to save face. And, it will be businesses, the local economies and the people that will suffer for his pride." Others pointed to data which showed that the number of COVID cases per 100,000 people were higher in Wales than in England, even after Wales implemented its Boxing Day restrictions. Peter Corsten said, "He knows we have access to data, right? He knows we can simply show that he's wrong with this statement. Doesn't he?" In the past 7 days, England has had the lowest number of cases per 100,000 of the four nations, with 1,787. Meanwhile, Wales has the highest with 2,578 per 100,000. Mr Johnson said this week that Plan B rules, which include mandatory face masks in shops and public transport, would continue in England. He added that the measures would be reviewed again by January 26. While the fully vaccinated are allowed to attend nightclubs and other large social venues in England, in Wales nightclubs are closed with spectators at sporting events limited to 50 outdoors and 30 indoors. Wales has also reintroduced the rule of 6 for public social gatherings, table service in hospitality venues and contact tracing.